It's finally here, the fourth and final season of Infinity Train, called Duet. And it is utterly fantastic. It's a season about heartbreak, it's a season about lost friendships, and it's a season about moving forward with your life. Now, I must admit that I'm a bit sad to see the show coming to an end. Season 1 was straightforward but earnest and poignant. It was good enough that the show could have chosen to just keep repeating that formula had it wanted to. Instead, it chose to go beyond that formula and keep reinventing and keep exploring new possibilities, as we saw in Season 2 and especially in Season 3. Season 3 was the darkest season of the show by a significant margin, with Simon falling into the gulf of extremism and being unable to pull himself out of that, even if it meant isolating himself from everyone else. But Season 4 I might honestly prefer. It is more subtle. Now, there is nothing as explosive and bombastic as we saw in the back half of Season 3, but Infinity Train has never been defined by those big bombastic moments anyway. It's been defined by subtlety. It's been defined by character relationships, exploring the dynamics between two people. And in that respect, the season utterly soars. If this is the last season of the show we ever get, as appears will be the case, it's a good note to go out on. It's truly excellent. So let's dive right into it. Our two leads this season are named Ryan and Minji. They've been best friends since they were young, and they both enter the train at exactly the same time, more or less, and they both have exactly the same number. This demonstrates how their fates are tied together, but even despite that, their lives are separate from each other's, and they must learn to recognize that. They have different dreams, different hopes, different goals, and different ideals, and their refusal to acknowledge that difference causes a lot of friction between them. When Kez, our guide for this season, first encounters them, Kez mistakes them for enemies, which is not exactly true, but what they say, that they're not enemies at all, that there's no bad blood between them, that they have nothing but positive feelings for each other, is not exactly true either. They have grown apart as they've grown older. It happens. That doesn't mean they don't care about each other, but they've taken their separate paths in life. That's what growing up is. People's paths diverge. From one perspective, it's a universal experience. Drifting apart doesn't necessarily have to be antagonistic or even oppositional. One person doesn't need to be the villain. Sometimes things just fall apart. That's life. On the other hand, it's not only a universal experience, it is also an extremely personal experience, as that universality is filtered through the memories you have with the other person. And all those feelings that you've shared with them, all those talks you've had, all those dreams you've discussed. And because of this, it's very individual as well as being universal, and the show captures that quite well. Now, if you're just looking for more magic and mystery and surrealism, this season will definitely provide you what you're looking for. There are fun cars to explore, there are new secrets to unravel. This series has always been great at building up a world to explore, a world to get lost in, both for you and for the characters. And as these characters get lost in the world, they have the chance to breathe. They have the chance to contemplate. When you're working with a show that's this short, relatively speaking, compared to something like Game of Thrones, there is the temptation to just push in as much plot as you can, and as much drama. Try to make it as exciting as you can to make up for your relatively short runtime. But This show is smart enough and disciplined enough to not give in to that impulse for more action, drama, suspense, whatever. It knows that stuff's important, but it also knows that a good show takes the time to breathe and allow us to just sit here with the characters. It knows how important it is to give you a feel of the environment and to give you a feel of how these specific characters interact with that environment. The quiet moments with Ryan and Minji are some of the best parts of the season. We get to see what the relationship is really like outside the immediate pressures of the train. Though the stakes aren't immediately as dire as they were in previous seasons, especially Season 3, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that we can spend a lot more time on these people, and it means we can spend more time on the relationship between these people. It's a much more meditative season than some of the ones we've seen before. There are a lot of flashbacks and a lot of time where it's not always things flying around, fireworks and explosions. It's you sitting with these characters and getting to ponder the bond between them. And because of this, it really draws you directly into the world without your realizing it immediately. You don't understand quite how invested you've become until the episode ends and you realize how much you want to watch the next one. Now, as for Kaz is fine. Not great, certainly not terrible, just fine, good. Kaz doesn't get in the way. The show understands that the season's not about Kaz, it's about these two. And it is in these two friends that the show derives a lot of its best drama. This is a smaller and more intimate season than a lot of the other seasons of the show that we've gotten already. So if you're looking for bombast and grandeur and explosions, fireworks, all that electrifying stuff, maybe this season won't entirely satisfy you. Now, that's not to say there is no action. There's quite a bit of it, and it fits in well to the character relationships. There's very much an Infinity Train formula, and this season of the show does not deviate too obviously from that formula. Now, before anyone gets angry, I want to say that I don't mean formula in its negative sense. I don't want to adopt that connotation. Formulas are not innately bad. There's a Pixar formula. There's a Ghibli formula. Does that mean that everything Pixar and Studio Ghibli put out is stale and unimaginative? No, of course not. It just means that these companies have a specific method that they tend to rely upon for creating conflict and for driving the narrative. Infinity Train is the same way. It's mostly the same Infinity Train that you've come to know and love, but there are a few new twists. The idea of two people getting onto the train at the same time is a clever idea, and it lends itself to the intimate personal relationship work that the show's at its strongest when it focuses on. And of course, every bond, every relationship is different when they're focused on properly. So by giving us these new bonds, the show renews itself, even though we, the viewer, have become quite accustomed to the various dynamics of the train. What I'm saying is that this season does not feel like a radical break from the Infinity Train formula. Rather, it feels much more like a distillation of that formula. It is everything that makes Infinity Train great and compelling, condensed into one season of the show. There are few distractions and there are few missteps. Perhaps there aren't as many innovations as there were in previous seasons of the show, and I wouldn't say it's quite as surprising as, say, Season 3, but it is less flawed. I can see myself going back to this season again and again in the future in a way that I really have not gone back to Season 2 or even Season 3 of the show. This is a season about disconnection. This is a season about disillusion and fragmentation. Though it takes time to individualize the characters, they're not just archetypes, and the show does not draw cheap false equivalencies between them. Their being on the train is more Ryan's fault than Minji's. Ryan is the one who wanted to be on the train. He's the one who wants to come to New York and pursue his music dreams. Minji is just left chasing after them. Ryan is the one who is responsible for getting them stuck on the train. Nonetheless, the show does not put everything on Ryan. This is not entirely 100% his fault. Though, yes, he is the one responsible for getting them stuck on the train, they're both kind of responsible for the degradation of their friendship over time. And that, more than whose fault it is that they're on the train, is the real heart of this season. They don't want to admit that they're not the people they were when they were younger. They don't want to admit that they've changed and moved forward. That is a difficult conversation to have because it requires saying goodbye. Not goodbye to the other person necessarily, not forever, but it does require saying goodbye to the relationship you had with that person. The relationship's different now. And it also means saying goodbye to your old conception of yourself. You're different too, and you need to recognize that. There are interesting ways in which this season is sort of an inverse of Season 3, which started off with two people, Grace and Simon, who were very foolish at the start of the season, and throughout the season, one person, Grace, was able to change, while the other person, Simon, was not, and he paid the consequences for that. This season's different, because they've both changed, but they're unwilling to realize that, and they're unwilling to realize the implications that has for their friendship, and their journey on the train helps them realize that. Like Infinity Train at its best, it takes a rather abstract idea and physicalizes it, embodies it in something tangible, in this train ride and all the strangeness contained within. The ending is especially notable. It's not as upsetting on a purely visceral level as Simon's death in Season 3, but it is very contemplative and melancholic. It's something I'm going to be thinking about a lot, most likely. And this is everything I really wanted from a final season of Infinity Train. It's a shame that it has to be the final season, but it's a good way to end the show. I hope you enjoyed this season as much as I did. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Infinity Train. I really hope you all enjoyed this season. It's a shame that the show's ending, but it's not a bad place to end it. Like, it's not like the show is being cut off right in the middle of a major dramatic cliffhanger. If the show has to end here, well, there are worse things in the world, you know? So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon, I promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.